The haunted library. The night was dark and moonless, a shroud of ebony enveloping the small town of Ravenswood. The library, an ancient relic from a bygone era, stood at the heart of the town like a silent sentinel. Its creaky wooden doors, etched with intricate carvings of long-forgotten scholars, groaned open, allowing a cold gust of wind to creep in. Inside, the library was dimly lit, the flickering candlelight casting eerie shadows upon the towering bookshelves. Dusty tomes lined the walls, their leather bindings cracked and yellowed with age. The air was heavy with the musty scent of aged paper and secrets long buried. At the stroke of midnight, an otherworldly hush descended upon the library. The books seemed to watch with invisible eyes, and the ancient portraits of stern-faced librarians on the walls appeared to shift in their frames. The library was coming to life. In the center of the room, a massive, leather-bound tome lay open on a lectern. Its pages fluttered as if stirred by an unseen hand. Words, written in a language long forgotten, began to emit a soft, eerie chant. The library's shelves trembled, and books dislodged themselves, tumbling to the floor with a cacophonous crash. Then, the books began to crawl. They slithered like serpents, pages rustling, as they converged toward the open tome. The ancient incantations held them in thrall, and they formed a grotesque circle around the lectern. From the shadows emerged the ghostly figure of a librarian, dressed in an archaic uniform. Her eyes, pale and hollow, glowed with an otherworldly light. With a skeletal hand, she gestured towards the encircling books, and they began to recite passages from their pages in eerie, echoing unison. The air grew colder, and a sense of dread washed over the library. The chant grew louder, more powerful, resonating with dark energy. The room seemed to pulse with a malevolent force, as if the very walls were closing in on those trapped within. Then, from the darkest corner of the library, a towering figure emerged. It was a grotesque amalgamation of various literary characters. The head of Frankenstein's monster rested upon Dracula's shoulders, while the body of a mummy was adorned with the tattered robes of a medieval sorcerer. It lumbered forward, animated by the unholy incantations. The librarian's ghostly form stepped back, a sinister smile playing upon her spectral lips. "Awaken, my creation," she whispered, her voice a haunting melody. "Bring me the knowledge that lies hidden in the realms beyond the living." The monstrous abomination obeyed, its stitched-together limbs moving with unnatural grace. It reached out with clawed hands and tore a book from the shelves. The book's cover bore the image of an ancient grimoire, and its pages crackled with forbidden spells. The creature placed the book upon the lectern, and the chant grew more frenzied. With each passing moment, the library seemed to warp and distort, its shelves shifting and rearranging themselves. Forgotten voices whispered from the pages of the crawling books, recounting tales of madness and despair. The very room itself appeared to be alive, pulsating with a malevolent consciousness. Outside, the town of Ravenswood lay shrouded in darkness, unaware of the horrors unfolding within the library's walls. But within that accursed place, the boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead had blurred, and the knowledge sought by the librarian's ghostly form was about to be unleashed. As the incantations reached their crescendo, a rift in the fabric of reality tore open above the lectern. It was a swirling vortex of darkness, a portal to a realm beyond human comprehension. From the depths of the abyss, a sinister presence emerged, its form shifting and changing, a shapeless mass of malevolence. The librarian's ghostly form recoiled in terror as the eldritch entity poured forth from the rift. It consumed the monstrous creation in an instant, absorbing its dark power and knowledge. With a deafening roar, the entity turned its attention to the chanting books, and they disintegrated into ashes, their secrets laid bare. The ancient tome on the lectern slammed shut, the incantations silenced. The room returned to stillness, the books returning to their rightful places on the shelves. The eldritch entity, its hunger sated, receded into the abyss, the rift sealing behind it. The librarian's ghostly form sighed, a melancholic expression on her spectral face. She had sought knowledge beyond the mortal realm, but in doing so, had unleashed a terror beyond imagination. With a mournful gaze, she faded into the shadows, leaving behind a library forever changed, haunted by the horrors it had witnessed. The night in Ravenswood remained shrouded in darkness, the town oblivious to the unspeakable evil that had briefly awakened within the haunted library. The ancient tome remained closed, its secrets locked away, waiting for a new soul brave or foolish enough to seek the forbidden knowledge within its pages. Years had passed since the night when the haunted library had come to life, and the town of Ravenswood had fallen into an eerie silence. The once thriving community now avoided the library like a cursed relic, its doors locked and windows boarded up. It was as if the memory of that fateful night had cast a perpetual shadow over the town. One evening, a young woman named Eliza arrived in Ravenswood. She had heard the legends of the haunted library and its forbidden knowledge and had come seeking answers to questions that had haunted her for years. Determined and unafraid, she stood before the derelict building, determined to uncover its secrets. With a crowbar in hand, Eliza pried open the creaky doors of the library and stepped inside. The air was thick with dust and despair, and the dim candlelight from her lantern flickered as if hesitant to penetrate the darkness. The room was in disarray, books scattered across the floor, and the shelves appeared to have been rearranged by some unseen force. As she explored deeper into the library, Eliza's heart pounded with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. She could feel the weight of the past, the residual energy of the horrors that had transpired within these walls. The memories of that fateful night still clung to the library like a lingering curse. In the center of the room, Eliza discovered the same lectern with a massive, leather-bound tome, just as it had been on that night years ago. The book was closed, its pages covered in a layer of dust. Eliza, her curiosity overpowering her fear, reached out to touch it. But before she could make contact, a voice whispered in her ear, chilling her to the bone. "Do you seek knowledge, young one?" Startled, Eliza spun around to find the ghostly figure of the librarian standing before her, her pale eyes fixed upon her with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. I do," Eliza stammered, her voice quivering. "I've come to learn the secrets of this place." The librarian's spectral form seemed to shimmer, her gaze unwavering. "Then you must be prepared for what you may discover," she warned. "The knowledge held within this library is not for the faint of heart." With a hesitant nod, Eliza turned her attention back to the ancient tome. She opened it, and as the pages fluttered to life, she began to read aloud the incantations she found within. The room grew colder, and the library seemed to awaken once more, though with less ferocity than before. But just as Eliza reached a crucial passage, the room began to shake, and the ghostly librarian's eyes widened in terror. "No," she cried. "You must stop." It was too late. The same rift that had appeared years ago tore open above the lectern, and the eldritch entity, the same sinister presence that had consumed the monstrous creation, emerged once more. But this time, something was different. As the entity descended upon the lectern, its form began to shift and change, contorting into a shape that was both grotesque and strangely familiar. It was as if it were mirroring Eliza's own fears and desires. With a sudden realization, Eliza recognized the truth. The entity was a reflection of her own inner demons, a manifestation of her deepest fears and insecurities. It was a twisted, distorted version of herself, born from the forbidden knowledge she sought. As the entity drew closer, it whispered words that echoed in Eliza's mind, revealing her darkest secrets and hidden regrets. She realized that the knowledge she had sought was not some external truth but a reflection of her own inner turmoil. In a moment of clarity, Eliza made a choice. She closed the ancient tome with a resounding thud, sealing the rift and banishing the entity back into the abyss. The room fell silent once more, and the library returned to its dormant state. The ghostly librarian, her expression a mix of relief and gratitude, nodded approvingly at Eliza. "You have shown wisdom beyond your years," she said. "You have learned that the truest knowledge is that which resides within oneself." Eliza left the haunted library that night, forever changed by her experience. She had sought answers to her questions and had found something far more profound, a deeper understanding of herself. The library, once a place of horror, had become a reflection of her own inner journey, a mirror to her soul. As she walked away from Ravenswood, leaving the cursed town behind, she knew that the library's secrets would remain locked away, waiting for another seeker, another soul brave or foolish enough to uncover the mysteries within. But Eliza had found her own truth, and it was a knowledge more powerful than any ancient tome or eldritch entity could offer, a knowledge of self. Years had passed since Eliza's encounter with the haunted library in Ravenswood. She had moved on with her life, the memories of that eerie night fading into the background like a half-forgotten dream. But there was one thing she couldn't quite shake, the nagging feeling that there was still something left unfinished, some lingering mystery that had yet to be unraveled. One stormy night, as rain lashed against the window panes of her cozy apartment, Eliza found herself poring over old journals and notes she had taken during her time in Ravenswood. The memories flooded back, and she became obsessed once more with the enigma of the haunted library. What had truly happened that night? What was the purpose of that eldritch entity, and why had it seemed so intimately connected to her own fears and desires? Determined to find answers, Eliza decided to return to Ravenswood. She knew that the library was sealed and abandoned, but she had a hunch that there might still be some clues hidden within its eerie confines. Armed with her resolve and a newfound sense of purpose, she set out on the journey back to the cursed town. As she entered Ravenswood, she was met with an even gloomier atmosphere than before. The town had withered further into obscurity, its streets even emptier, its buildings in even greater disrepair. The library, standing like a forsaken sentinel in the heart of the town, looked even more decrepit, its windows shattered and its doors hanging askew. Eliza pushed open the creaky doors and entered the library once more. The interior was just as she remembered it, still bearing the marks of its tumultuous past. The room was silent, but Eliza felt the weight of history pressing down on her. She approached the lectern where she had once opened the ancient tome. It was still there, covered in a thick layer of dust. But something caught her eye, an inscription on the lectern that she had missed before. It was a message etched into the wood. "Seek within to find without." The word sent a shiver down Eliza's spine. What did it mean? She glanced around the room, her gaze falling on the towering bookshelves. With a sense of purpose, she began to search the shelves, pulling out dusty tomes and scanning their pages. Hours turned into days as Eliza meticulously examined every book in the library. She was determined to uncover the truth, to decipher the cryptic message etched into the lectern. And then, as she reached the end of her search, she found it, a small, unassuming book hidden behind a row of larger volumes. The book was plain and nondescript, its cover devoid of any ornamentation. But as Eliza opened it, she realized that it was not just any book. It was her own journal, the one she had kept during her first visit to Ravenswood and her encounter with the haunted library. As she flipped through the pages, she saw her own handwriting, recounting her experiences, her thoughts, and her emotions. It was all there, the story of her journey, her fears, and her struggle to confront her inner demons. She realized that the haunted library had not merely reflected her fears, but had drawn them out, making her confront her own vulnerabilities and insecurities. The cryptic message on the lectern suddenly became clear: seek within to find without. The true knowledge of the library was not contained in dusty tomes or eldritch entities but within the depths of one's own soul. With this revelation, Eliza felt a profound sense of closure. She closed her journal and placed it back on the shelf, where it disappeared into the rows of books, becoming just another tome in the library's collection. As she walked out of the library, the rain had stopped, and a faint glimmer of sunlight pierced through the clouds, casting a pale light on the once cursed town of Ravenswood. Eliza knew that she had found the answers she had sought, not in external mysteries but in the exploration of her own inner self. And so, she left Ravenswood behind once more, knowing that the haunted library had played its role in her life, guiding her towards self-discovery. As she drove away, she couldn't help but smile, for she had learned that the greatest mysteries were not found in the supernatural but in the human heart, the darkness and the light that dwelled within.